Hello, women in product. I'm thrilled to be back speaking with you all today. Hopefully, you're all enjoying the conference, and I have something more to add to your experience. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Melika Hope, pronouns she, her. I'm a director of product management at Twitter, where I've been for just over a year now. And if you saw me speak here last year, you'd know I had actually just accepted the Twitter offer before the conference. Before that, I led product for Canada, Mexico, and Brazil at Intuit. So I was thinking about what to submit for the conference this year, and I obviously knew that I wanted to add the most value I possibly could for you all. So I mentor a number of young, talented women in product, and when I asked them the answer, or when I thought about them, the answer was pretty clear. By far, the most common piece of advice I'm asked to give is how do I make the transition from being an IC or an individual contributor to be a people manager? And it does seem like there's some kind of secret method to make it into people management. My own personal journey into people management was definitely not the smoothest, and we will talk about that in a bit. And I don't have all the answers, but hopefully this talk can give you some tips and practical guidance on how to tackle this challenge from someone who has successfully transitioned into people management, as well as promoted several people into people management. So I'm going to use a framework today of 4 Ds: decide, declare, demonstrate, and deliver. I wish I could take credit for this, but actually one of my colleagues at Twitter gave me the idea. So Amber, if you are listening, thank you so much. And so the first one might not be what you're expecting to hear, but it's really important. First of all, you need to decide really thoughtfully if people management is the right path for you. People management is not easy, and it is definitely not always fun. I remember one of my managers was quitting. I ended up replacing him eventually. And when I asked him why he was leaving, he was like, honestly, Melika, people management is such a drag. And it totally can be. There are a ton of adjustments you have to make to the way you're already working to be a successful manager, both in tactics and in mindset. First of all, your day looks totally different. As an IC, you own a lot of your own time when you're not attending meetings organized by more senior people. And in my experience, I was left to my own devices to get things done. I operated on my own schedule. I had some amount of accountability to my cross-functional team, of course, but I was largely accountable to myself and my manager. And that changes dramatically when you become a people manager. You then become accountable to your team. Your tasks for the day can change in a second if your team member has an issue that requires your support. I've seen managers who still see their individual work as more important than supporting their team, and that is not the way to be a successful people manager. If you want to be a great manager, and I assume you do, then being a servant to your team is incredibly important. Success also is going to look different. You're no longer in a cadence of simply delivering good work and then getting rewarded for it. The rewards you get as a manager are more long-term as you see your team members develop and deliver on their commitments. Getting used to longer-term gratification for good work can be an adjustment when you move into people management. You also have to be careful with your time and way more proactive. Helping team members develop takes time and energy, and you have to allocate time for it. Some weeks I get so caught up in my own deliverables, meetings, I find myself going into one-on-ones with my team unprepared. Just last week, I canceled a staff meeting because I didn't have time to create a thoughtful agenda. I consider these weeks failures as a manager. You have to set aside time for team development and truly put effort into providing them with support. After a few years of scrambling, I started setting aside my Monday morning and devoting it completely to the development of my team, preparing for meetings, etc., ensuring I'm on top of milestones. And that doesn't even mention the additional training, management-only meetings that a lot of larger companies have. Finally, you have to be prepared to kind of suck at it at first. Early in your career, when you're an IC moving up in your career, generally you nail what you're doing and then are given more responsibility, you adjust, and you continue to do well. You rise with the work. For a lot of people, people management is a huge adjustment because you're used to being a rock star IC, and then suddenly you have to take on an entirely new area and learn a bunch of new capabilities. For high performers, this can be a bit of a blow. Usually you're faced with an entirely new challenge. It requires a completely different skill set than you're used to. So you have to accept that. And then, of course, there's the unspoken part that management is generally harder for women. Women often have to shoulder way more emotional burden when leading a team. There have been many times where I've had employees cry, come to me for emotional support, slack me, panicking, and depend on me to calm them down. A lot of your day will get spent in people's emotions, and that just increases the more senior that you get. So I've given you a lot of things to think about for decide. Is this really what you want and are passionate about? And as I was preparing for this talk, I read some research that said only 1 in 10 employees actually have the traits to be a great people manager. I think that stat is a bit unfair, but when I look back at my own career, I think I've had 12 managers and literally only one could I say was a great manager and a great leader. So it's definitely not easy and takes a huge amount of growth mindset to be successful. Some would say that in order to be recognized or accelerate in your career, you need to take on a people management role. And to this, I would say yes or no. Many tech companies are starting to understand that not all employees are made to be team leaders. Some are awesome ICs. They thrive on getting their hands dirty and building and companies are creating more and more roles that allow ICs to be recognized and level up without having to become managers. Principal, staff, distinguished level PM roles now exist at a lot of organizations. So consider if this is something that you would actually enjoy more and excel at more. I know a ton of late career PMs who have had fruitful, lucrative, and successful career paths as ICs. So let's assume that you know all of this and you still feel that people management is right for you. You've gotten the first D out of the way, the decide. That's where I was. I loved coaching, teaching, and inspiring teams. I loved speaking in front of groups. I was passionate about mentorship. So after you've made that decision, it's time to let people know. This is declare. And there's a reason I'm going into the declare phase before even talking about the prerequisites you need to be a good manager. And that's because it's never too early to let people know what you want to do. Not only will they keep you in mind when opportunities arise, but if your colleagues and manager care about your career, they'll help you identify areas you need to improve with plenty of time for you to work on them. I'll tell you a bit about my path into people management and why I feel declaring is so important. And it's something that a lot of women don't do. Most people don't realize this about me, but I am pretty shy by nature. I am also, as a lot of high achievers are, more insecure about myself and my skills than I come across. And so that combination has made it very challenging for me historically to ask for what I want. I lack that innate confidence that I see a lot of my, let's be honest, male colleagues have. So I'm also ambitious. I respond incredibly well to recognition, positive reinforcement, and I'm also an overachiever. So all of those things say I definitely want to move forward in my career, not necessarily as quickly as possible, but with some amount of speed. So I was working at a large company in the Canadian office. It was a very unique role in that there were very few of us in Canada, and we all had different areas of responsibility. So for my core products, I was the most senior person in Canada for a lot of my time there. This meant my role was very high visibility. I got a ton of time and exposure with the Canadian executive team. Even though there was a group manager above us in another location, at the time, eventually they created a group manager role for us. And at the time, I wasn't even considering myself for it. I was too junior. But I was having regular conversations with our country manager, who was a VP. And he gave me a lot of positive feedback. He told me he was a huge fan of mine. He was in my corner, and he saw me as the future product leader for Canada. So I always left those talks feeling pretty great. And that's how our relationship continued. Fast forward a year, I was a year into being a senior product manager. The group PM had left and they were hiring someone new. So I was definitely interested in the role, but I didn't know that I had a shot, and I definitely didn't feel like I was ready. My boyfriend really encouraged me to apply for it. He said, "What did I have to lose?" And my response to him was, if they felt I was ready for it, they would have approached me about it. And in retrospect, I can't believe that there was a time where I felt so shy that I couldn't even express my interest in a role. If I could go back in time, I would have taken advantage of that one-on-one time I got with my country manager and said to him, "I'm really interested in the GPM role for Canada. I'd love your thoughts on my level of readiness for the opportunity. And if you feel it's not the right time, let's talk about a development plan, areas of opportunity, and create a formal plan for me to get there." So why didn't I have that conversation at the time? Looking back, it would have reflected positively on me. Leaders love seeing people that know what they want to do and express a willingness to learn to get there. But at the time, I felt embarrassed by my ambition. I felt like I was shooting too high. And nothing was scarier to me than being told I was way out of touch with my capabilities and was nowhere near getting ready for an opportunity like that. So instead, I kept quiet, and eventually they filled the role. Fast forward another year or two, and then I was starting to get antsy. I'd been a senior PM for a while now. I liked the group PM above me, but I actually felt like I could maybe do a better job than him. Um, but he was the only role in the office that was more senior than me. So I did worry about career progression. He told me multiple times I would be his successor, but I didn't know when that would be. So randomly one day, about 2 weeks after my year-end review, he pulls me aside and he says, "Are you ready to take things to the next level?" And I didn't know what he meant at first, but he told me he was leaving and he was advocating with all of the relevant leaders for me to take his place. So I was so excited, immediately started planning to be in this role, like super stoked. Imagine my surprise when a few days later, I learned that I wasn't actually a shoo-in for the job. In fact, the same country manager that had been my advocate was questioning my readiness to be a good people leader. I won't get into all the details, but the next 7 months were the hardest months of my career at the time. While my country manager wasn't the decision maker, he had a heavy influence on the decision of who would get promoted. The same person who had told me so many times I was the future leader for product in Canada told me he didn't think I was ready and that he was biased towards someone external. So I digged a bit more. I talked to my mentor, who was our finance leader. I spoke to other members of our exec team. There was unanimous shows of support for me taking on this role. I also spoke to the actual hiring manager, who was in California, and he was supportive of me, but indicated that there was organizational details being sorted out. So while they all made up their minds, I was super anxious and on edge. I felt like if I messed up in any way, it would be used as a reason for me to not get promoted. And meanwhile, since my boss had left, I had taken on the responsibilities of that group manager role without the title and without the compensation. So I found myself in a situation I hear about all too often, particularly for employees from underrepresented groups, given more responsibility, but kept from the recognition that goes along with it. So the rest of the story isn't as relevant, but I interviewed for the role eventually. I had to prepare like a lengthy case study. After the interview, I was told that all of the external candidates that applied were rejected, but it still took a month for them to promote me. But I did it, and I was the head of product for Canada. All that to say, I really think things would have been different if I'd been more clear, not just that year, but also throughout those 7 months and in the years before. I asked myself what my leaders thought about it and if I'd accepted a ton of feedback. But did I really advocate for myself? Did I tell them I am the right person for the job? Did I pitch a vision for the product and for Canada? I didn't really do anything but hear what other people had to say about me and accept it. Maybe they thought I wasn't ready to lead because I wasn't acting like a leader. Now, I'm definitely not saying I take all the responsibility here. I think a lot of people handled that poorly. But what I am saying is, as soon as you know what you want in your career, the best thing you can do is tell as many people as possible. It could be years before you're ready, but your leaders won't help you move forward unless you tell them where you want to go. So that's declaration. In addition to declaration, you have to make sure you're actually showing what will make you a good manager. So while you may not be managing people yet, you have to give leaders the confidence that you will be able to do so well. You've decided, you've declared. Now it's trying to demonstrate the qualities of a leader and a manager. And you can do this simultaneously with declare. There's no formal order, but let's talk about some of the traits that we look for when we promote people into people management roles and how you can display them now. Number one, excellence. And I talked about this last year too. If you're not nailing your current role, you can't expect anyone to have the confidence that you'll be able to coach other people to nail your current role. So in order to move forward in any way in your career, you have to do great work. Let's assume you're already doing that. A critical component of management is being able to build bridges with other teams and create strong relationships. A trap that new managers fall into is constantly asking for more resources when they encounter problems. And I can tell you from experience that rarely happens, and it really irritates senior executives. A great leader can influence other teams that they have dependencies on and help build collaborative projects that will get everyone farther than individual work. Being able to show that you can solve your own problems in this way is critical to being a manager and to being someone that people enjoy working with. When I was fighting my way into people management, having the support and advocacy of those other executives I talked to was important. When a leader has to make a big decision, they feel a lot more comfortable doing that if they know their peers are supportive. Another obvious space is coaching and mentorship. I took every opportunity I could to find mentorship and coaching opportunities. When we had a new employee join the team from another department, I offered to do his hands-on onboarding to PM. I held sessions for our marketing team on how to do a great product demo. I led a series of 101 sessions on our domain space to every team in the company, from sales to leadership. And most tech companies have employee resource groups where you can gain access to mentorship opportunities, both to get mentored and see how an awesome mentor behaves, but also to practice mentorship on more junior employees. They also have a lot of great speaking opportunities. I've taught product management formally for external product schools, and that is something I encourage my staff to do if they're looking to get experience with teaching and coaching. If you don't have the opportunities to showcase these skills that I'm describing, ask for them. This is why Declare is so important. Force your current leaders to acknowledge your goals and give you opportunities to work on them. Find opportunities to get in front of groups. There are few leaders who don't have to regularly give presentations and nail storytelling. This is a great way to show that you stand out. Apply to speak at conferences, or even just giving internal presentations can really showcase your skills. I remember one of the leaders I worked with saw me speak at a conference, and afterwards he told me that was the moment where he truly believed I could be the head of product. He felt I could lead and inspire a team because he saw me do it with an audience. If you're doing this work and you feel like it's not being seen or being acknowledged, document it and share it. Share all these processes. Share your wins, your learnings, your losses with your manager in your one-on-ones, but also with your teams. Documenting a journey that you went through and reflecting on it, and then sharing it out to your peers is a behavior that people will notice. And it actually appears, really self-reflective, really humble, and really impressive. There is so much more you can do to showcase management and leadership skills than actually managing a team, but showing that you're thoughtful about how to manage a team can definitely help. So in my interview to be a manager, I was drilled about people management, managing people, how I would approach it. Often in your first promotion, you end up managing people who were previously your peers, which can be a bit uncomfortable. So also think through that and how you would handle it. Talk to mentors, talk to others, and get advice on how to navigate those situations. The last piece of advice I'll give you: I've given a number of examples of how to demonstrate management and leadership skills. If you find yourself in an environment where even if you ask, those aren't being provided to you, you may want to consider if you're in the right environment for career progression. I've had a number of young PMs tell me that when they speak to their managers about promotions, and I've been there, they're told, oh, it's not your time, or you aren't ready yet. That feedback is not useful. If you've declared your intentions, you've asked for opportunities, or at the very least, you've asked for specifics on what is missing for you to move upwards, and you aren't given that, I think you're in a place that isn't conducive to career growth, and you may want to consider a change. A great manager gets excited about elevating their team members, and if you don't receive that excitement, it may be time to find a place where you will. The final D, we don't need to spend a ton of time on: delivery. Once you've earned the trust of your organization and are promoted to being a people manager, it's obviously important to deliver against expectations. Nothing will be easy at first, so ask questions. Ask for advice from seasoned managers. There are a number of new challenges you'll face: giving hard feedback, hiring, navigating reorgs. So ask around and don't be shy to get advice. Most people I know in tech love to talk about, their journeys, how they navigated certain problems. So people will be happy to lend you a hand. And remember, people management isn't a one-way road. If you try it and actually find it's not for you, I know a ton of people who have actually been a people manager and moved back to IC. It made them a more well-rounded employee, and it was just a better fit for them. So craft your career in a way that works for you, not other people's expectations. As I said earlier, it's definitely possible to be successful with whatever route works for you. Managing and coaching my team is the absolute highlight of my job, and it's the most important part of my job. I hope that all of you that share that same passion for coaching get the opportunity to shine, and hopefully this talk helped you on your journey to people management. Thank you for having me, Women in Product, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you in the Q&A.